going to try to have a shorter recap this time. Just stick to talking about the teams whose stage is already over. And then the next one, I'm going to do a big old playoff predictions. The 7 teams that have already played all their games are the Valiant, the Dragons, the Gladiators, the Spark, the Shock, the Defiant, and the New York Excelsior. I'll start with the Los Angeles Valiant. Their stage 1 has probably been what they would describe as a catastrophe, because they've already fired their head coach, and it's a reasonable decision, honestly. Like, everyone's questioning what they're doing, and they have no results to back up what they're doing, like playing Kuki instead of Custa, having Kuki even in it all off the role he played the entire last year. Like, why invest time trying to make him into a different player? That's a really weird thing to do. And then you have 2 great tank players in Space and Fate, and you are in a tank heavy meta, and you aren't even succeeding in the slightest. You have 0 wins. It's a quarter of the season through and you have no wins. So Shanghai Dragons, I would be pretty satisfied with how they've played so far. They lost their first 2 games, but after that they went 3-2, and the only 2 losses were to the Fuel, and they ended it probably with their best win in franchise history, beating the London Spitfire. So they have a lot of promise, especially compared to last year. Like, you can't really be a Shanghai fan and be like, dude, why aren't we better? It's like, dude, you just take what you can get at this point. You're 3-4. You have a clear path to making the playoffs if you continue getting better throughout the year. You're not in the basement like last year, so you should be pretty satisfied with what you got. The Spark, honestly, they're a little bit disappointing. All the analysts coming in pegged them as the best incoming for new franchise. So to have them be not even the top half, I mean, you've got a lot of people scratching their heads. They looked very good at the start, but ever since they just haven't looked like the same team. So opinion on them really has to be compared to the expectations for other expansion teams. And you have like the Charge, the Reign, the Hunters, even the Defiant especially, overperforming their expectations. And then while the Spark not really having that bad of a stage, considering like they're only 3-4. I mean, they do have a chance to get a winning record by the end of the year. They're not setting themselves up for failure. They have some good wins, but you think like out of all the rosters, this one's supposed to have one of the most talented, but they're not even in the top half of the expansion teams. It's kind of a disappointment, but it's certainly not something to be discouraged about, because there were moments where they looked like a very good team, and maybe in a different meta, maybe with more time together, they will figure out what is the best for them, because they do have a lot of players. Gladiators coming in were expected to be a top 5 team, and they didn't live up to that this stage, but compared to like the Valiant, compared to other teams, it's certainly not something to just be panicking about. The teams they were able to beat with their 3 wins are good teams. I think all of them are going to be making the stage playoffs if things hold as they are right now. They beat the Charge, the Shock, the Reign. Those are good wins. So it's not like they aren't proving that they're a good team. They started playing Decay at the end, and this past week for them really was a big turnaround. They started to show why people thought they were going to be the best, and I think playing Decay was the right move for them, because having him and Roar play together, especially in this meta where having a Zarya and a Rein synergize, is probably what caused them to go from looking like kind of shaky team to a much more threatening team, a team that can 4-0 the Atlanta Reign, which looks very good so far. I think if they continue to play Decay and Roar together, who have had so much experience together and were like the biggest targets for a lot of teams during free agency, they will start getting a lot of success. I don't think it's Surefour is bad as a player. You'd probably be doing just as good if they had the same lineup as last year. But in this scenario, you don't know how good these 2 guys are at speaking English. They're more than the sum of their parts at that point when they're able to work together, because they haven't played in an English-speaking roster before. The Shock, you had a lot of analysts saying that this was going to be the best team throughout the whole year, and that, yeah, they're 4-3, and they're just barely into the stage playoffs if things hold out how they are again. But there's still really no reason to panic for them either, just like the LA Gladiators. All their losses are to good teams. The Excelsior, the Titans, neither of them have lost, so having 2 of your losses to them is not something to be scared about. And their 3rd loss to the Gladiators, another team expected to be very good coming into the season. There's no bad losses on their resume, and all the teams they've beaten, that they were supposed to. They beat them pretty handily, like the Justice, like the Paris Eternal. But yeah, and even the games they lost to the Titans and the Excelsior, they were very competitive throughout. The scores might not be very flattering to them. There's a lot more that's untold by those scores. How easily a map could have gone their way. Certain ults were used better, things like that. So 4-3, it's certainly not the most ideal start for them. Losing those 2 games was probably not that big of a blow. The Gladiators won. They probably think they should have won and went to a map 5. But second to last team I'm going to talk about is the Toronto Defiant. 5-2. That's probably a lot better than people thought, and it's certainly nothing to scoff at. It's been a very competitive stage. A lot of teams have gotten wins when they weren't supposed to, and they have looked very good at times. But I don't think we should be going around anointing them yet as like one of the top 3 teams like they are in the standings right now. None of their wins are to teams currently in the stage playoffs right now, and both of their losses were to the 2 teams that are in the stage playoffs. It's really hard to read that they are an upper echelon team. You could really chalk up their great start to an easier schedule than most have faced. But at the same time, you could say, well, those teams would be in the playoffs right now if they didn't win those games, if the Defiant lost. So it's not something to get overexcited about for the Defiant, but it's certainly not something to kind of brush under the rug. They're definitely better than people predicted, but they're not one of the best teams, even though their record is very good so far. And then lastly is the New York Excelsior. I mean, people kind of forgot how good they were last year, I guess. People were so quick to think of other teams as better than them, but they really are the best team. They're going to stay as the best team and be known as the best team until someone takes it from them, because at this point, it's hard to argue any other team. Yeah, you have the Titans are also undefeated, but they have not looked as dominant as the New York Excelsior. I mean, they've gone to map 5s several times. The closest New York Excelsior came to losing was their first game, never since. I mean, it just seems like whatever someone throws at them, it will always have an answer and always be able to bounce back and flip losable fights in their favor. And it's just like, you can never get one step ahead of them. They're always 2 steps ahead. There's still 13 teams that need to finish their stage, but the one team that really has the most to prove this last 2 days is the Atlanta Reign. They're the only playoff team that plays 2 games. So they have a lot of fluctuation they could go through. They can be 3-4, they can be 5-2, and that's a really big difference. Best of the week.
Spawn, inside a grab. Let's see if Elsa can they just try to grab it there. Here's a self-destruct. The 2 mechs crying together. There's a sound barrier from the Hunters. They do have just enough time to get out to the payload. They're making the most of it. Slime goes down.
How
the
they make it
Titans
out?
thought they had it, but Bumper is missing, and they're going to chase them all the way through. 1 minute 20 seconds remain, and the Titans, the ace up their sleeve, is gone.
Question, Torbjorn defense, that's incredibly weird for Point B, but they know how to run these strategies. They have the plays in mind. Look at this flank from Jinmu too. Gross.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And the whole team,
Another one.
the whole team just really knows how to play around.
What? Jinmu, you beast!
It's got to be after, but you still needed to connect with all 6 players to really feel his impact, and not getting it on your tanks, that feels bad.
The card's moving.
Yep, slowly, surely. There is a back cap underway right now. The Dragons
They have not a clue.
are getting this one on. The Spitfire have no idea. They're not even looking at the top of their screens. Ding's got to get there. Oh no! I love the Spitfire! Oh god, yeah.